I work here at the Lawrence Public Library. We're welcoming an author, a local author, Richard Edward Noble. First off, and why don't we hold up one of the books? Why don't you get Summer with Charlie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems to be one everybody's interested in around Lawrence.
Yes, there is reason for that. This is one of the books that he's written. We have it available at the library. We will be selling some of them today. It is a memoir of growing up in the immigrant city. And I first would like you, Richard, for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what you've done with your life, and why you're a writer now.
Okay, I can say I grew up at 32 Chelmsford Street in North Lawrence, and I went to St. Rita's Grammar School, then to Central Catholic, and then Northern Essex. I graduated from Northern Essex, and then I attended Merrimack College briefly, and then I moved to, at about 27 years old, I left Lawrence, and I went to Florida, Fort Lauderdale. And now the question was, how did I become a writer? I can tell you what stimulated me, because all through grammar school and high school, I was probably one of the poorest students, and I don't know why that was, because my sister was the salutatorian from St. Mary's, and my brother was the valedictorian, and he was everybody thinks he was a genius, because he graduated at the time with the highest academic average that Central Catholic ever had, and he had more credits than they had courses, and I was the C student, or less. I think I got C's and B's, to tell you. I was okay, but I didn't read, I didn't do anything. And when I attended Northern Essex Community College, there was a professor there, and I can still remember his name, and I think he's still alive, Roland Kimball, and he taught literature. I don't know if you know him. He was, a while back, when I wrote the books, I sent it to him, and he told me all the mistakes I had made and everything else. But he said it was good stories, and I like your ability to tell a story. But one day, he assigned to the class, the duty to write a poem, and he called it a haiku. Haiku, little, as few words as possible to make some kind of a concept. And I did that, and I don't know what happened, but as soon as I started writing something, and now I never stopped from that time on. I have stacks and volumes of poetry at home that I'll be putting together to make volumes, depending on how long I live. And I just loved writing and never stopped.
Are the chapters that I get on a weekly basis going to be part of some other work?
Next book, yeah. When that gets to be out, I'm going to call it, I think the tentative title I have right now, as you know, is Lawrence, My Hometown. And why I'm doing that is interesting, because one of my friends that recently passed away, if you've been getting the things you read about Jack Greco, and a few years back I had looked him up on the internet, and we got together, and he lived in South Carolina, and I went and visited, and whenever we get together, we all start talking about Lawrence. And this Jack Greco was I think I just said it on the radio station, I gave you the story, but he had a very exciting life, went to General Electric and traveled all over, and he's a big shot for the company and had all kinds of experiences. And as we were talking at his home, he said, because we were going back over all the old stories about growing up in Lawrence, and he said, those years growing up in Lawrence were the best years of my life. And I was saying, wow, that's the best years of his life. So I said, maybe I ought to start recording some of these old war stories that we had as kids growing up, that we all talked together. Every time we get together, you tell all the old stories. So basically, I feel like I'm a historian here, and I'm recording, I'm doing a written history of the old war stories of growing up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s in Lawrence. And I think the title I'll have on it is Lawrence, My Hometown. It sounds good to me, I don't have to be too elaborate.
I visualize in another 2 years one of my book clubs is going to do local writers, and we might do a new one when we do that. And
I think it's going to be pretty good. I think it's coming out better than I thought.
We're coordinating it with the 100th anniversary of the 1912 strike, which is only
well, that's another
2.5 years away.
That's an interesting segue here, is the 1912 strike, because as I started getting more and more research and so forth and such, and I go to all these yard sales and buy books and so forth, I didn't know nothing about the 1912 strike. As you know, I put a segment in Charlie book about it. because I went to
There's
all
a
these.
reason for that.
I went to the schools and everything, and I never heard nothing. I had my father was a mill worker. His grandfather was a mill worker. My grandmother was a weaver. You know, all of them worked in the mills and everything else. And I'm saying, why? I saw on the back of this book, strike in 1912 in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I said, when did that happen? I never heard anything. So then I started researching that, and I read that Bruce Watson's book.
Yeah.
And that was great. And I was working on a book to write about the Lawrence strike because there was no,
Yeah.
and he beat me to it, you know. And then I read the one by the Bells of Lowell, you know, very
Bells of
good.
New England.
Banks,
Yes.
and it talked about the
Yep.
Pemberton mill disaster. And
Yeah.
now I've been getting in for the last 10 or 15 years
It's
reading
part of
about
the
Lawrence.
story about the strike is that, of course, Lawrence disowned it for like 50 years or so. Do you remember the parade of 1962? The Garden Country Parade? Would you be gone by then?
No. I was here, 62. I was still in high school.
It was a
They used to have
very
those
big
all-
parade.
Yeah.
It was not an anniversary of the strike,
No.
but an anniversary
Of
of
the
the parade that followed the strike because the church and various people
To counteract the socialists and
the
communists.
IWW, yes.
Yes. Well, that's why in this book, because of all that, I tried to incorporate all that. Like this was going to be a little book about Lawrence, so I actually put in an appendix about the Lawrence strike, because there was no information. There's a million things written about it, but nobody knew about it, and I thought, well, this is the time
Sure.
you should put this in the book. So this is all about Lawrence.
Yeah.
And I was trying to put as much memorabilia in, you know, the Lawton's hot dogs and the beef sandwich shops and all this. So, and I even put in a bit about Big Bill Haywood and everything, you know. So it's kind of a interesting book. Plus, you have the basic story of the tragedy of Charlie Carikas, you know. As a matter of fact, I wanted to say this. I don't know if you know this, but Charlie Carikas' mother worked at the library. She worked at the Lawrence Library.
Yes,
She worked
someone
at the
told
old
me that.
library,
Yeah.
and she worked over here. Yeah, that's interesting.
Now, why don't you tell us the names of the books you've written and
Okay.
a sentence or so about each one. of
Okay,
them.
sentence. So this book is all my books, like they say, what's the category? And I would say they're creative nonfiction, which means that they're based on real things, and then where all events and exactitude I've forgotten, I fill in with the creative imagination. So they call that creative nonfiction. This I consider the book. This is the story. This is the most serious book I write. All the others are kind of humorous. This is a very serious book, and this is my explanation of what happened inside the closed doors at 32 Chelmsford Street, where I was raised as a boy, and all the problems we had. And I think it's very applicable today because of the depression that we're going through. Because in this time, this is about my father, unemployment, alcoholism, and the depression that was existing in Lawrence after the mills closed down. You know, so that's that one. Now this is one of the first ones. These two are my first two books, and actually I paid to do these. Now I have a new method of publishing where I can do it very inexpensively. But so these were the first ones, and this has been a reissue. I'm going to redo this one, Charlie book, also, and clean it up. But one day. But this book was one of the first ones I wrote, and my wife and I, in 1976, in celebration of the bicentennial at that time, we got the bright idea that we would quit our good jobs. My wife was a respiratory therapist, and I was a restaurant manager at Fort Lauderdale. And we said, let's take off at least for a year and go see America. So that trip has lasted till this day. We're still bumming around, and we did what we call hoboing America, where we actually went out and picked fruits and vegetables and did migrant farm work and worked in the fields and parked and equipped in shelters and lived under bridges, and we saw what you'd say is the underside of America, which is coming into play more today with the Depression. They're finding more people living under bridges and so forth and such. So that's Hoboing America. That's a good one. I really like that one. Of course, I love them all. You know. Now this is my favorite because I started off writing poetry, and I love poetry. So this is a book of poetry I put together.
Following in the footsteps of America's favorite poet.
Robert Frost.
Yes.
Yes. And I like Robert Frost. I like I like the working man poet, Carl Sandburg, and I like that. My favorite poet is the poet of the Yukon, Robert Service. I used to love his ballads, and I read everything that I haven't read everything he's written. I found out he wrote a lot of stuff. You know, he's a very, very prominent guy. But so this is my first attempt, and I've got tons of poetry. So I put this together, and it's got different sections. And the first section in this is, I don't know if you got the chance to read any of these, but the poems inspired by Lawrence and some of the names, Mr. Duchnowski's Bean Suppers and My Hometown and Hanging Out and stuff, So this book I really like. I like poetry.
Turn the cover to the
Oh, yeah. And one of my favorite poems is right here on the back. You want me to read it?
Sure,
It's only a short
sure.
one.
Go ahead.
And I called it, these are old-fashioned, but what I like, my thing is, you don't have to go to Harvard to understand this poetry. This is I say the old-fashioned poetry. So here's a poem I entitled, But Do You Love Me? It says, but do you love me? And how would I know? I look into your eyes, but the love doesn't show. So how? How would I know? Days and nights, weeks and years, moments of laughter and a lifetime of tears. But do you love me? And how would I know? Nothing I see would tell me it's so. We touch, we love, we laugh, we smile. We cherish the memories mile after mile. But do you love me? And how would I know? Unless once in a while you tell me so. That's one of those simple little poems, but I used to have these poems pinned up in my little ice cream parlor in Florida and Carroll. People used to come in and copy that one off the wall.
So now you're organized, yeah.
Okay, where did I did that. And this is my latest book that just came out. And this is Noble Notes on Famous Folks. And what this is my attempt to make history more enjoyable. I like to look up and research in my spare time, and I read up all these famous people. So I got people in here like Abelard and Archimedes and Aristotle, and going all the way to Bill Clinton and George Bush or whoever. And I research them, read about them until I feel that I have something to say. And then I write a short little page and a half or so, maybe 500-800 words. And in a humorous or satirical vein or something. Did you ever read Willie Cuppy? Okay, Willie Cuppy made a book called The Rise and Fall of Practically Everybody. And he used to write to the New Yorker.
Yes,
he used to write to the New York magazine. And he's a very smart man. And he used to research exhaustively all these characters from history and come up with all these little known facts. And the first time I read that, I loved it, so I was inspired by that. I'm no Willie Cuppy, but this is my Willie Cuppy impersonation book where you try to gives realistic historical information about historical figures with a sense of humor and entertaining at the same time, which I hope it is. And this one, when I retired, I decided that I wanted to become a writer and get paid for it. You have to get paid to be a writer, so you can claim to be a writer. Somebody got to give you some money,
I know.
Because that's the rule, So I got a job at the local newspaper. And he paid me. And I started doing silly things like covering the county commission meetings. And
really exciting things, yeah.
Right. But then finally he allowed me to write a column. He was actually afraid of me, the guy, because he was a little more conservative. I'm kind of radical, But he did allow me to write a column, and I started writing a column, and I ended up writing a column there for 3 years until the paper just now recently went out of business, like all the newspapers are going down. So this is a compilation of articles from the East Pointer. Now the East Pointer is synonymous or analogous to what you'd call a Seabrook. You know how they categorize the Seabrookers? If you know Seabrookers, they have all these, they're intermarried and also. Well, East Pointer is the same type of little fishing village where all the fishermen and they make fun of them, and you're from East Point. So I was the East Pointer, and I wrote all these little pithy little columns about the poor fishermen and how they live down there. So that's it. Did I hit them all?
I believe so.
That was more than a sentence on each one, wasn't it?
That's okay. That's okay. I think it was pretty obvious to me in reading the book and the little stories you sent to me that you were a storyteller.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that those of us who aren't and do enjoy it appreciate very much.
That's great.
And I was hoping that since I've never met you in person, that you would be a good storyteller in person as well. And it seems to be the case as well. Yeah, no,
we do a lot of talking.
Yeah.
And my wife does a lot of listening. See, she's my
Oh,
audience.
God bless
I take
her,
her
yes,
everywhere.
yeah.
Where she goes, she's already. She knows all these stories, and then she has to edit them, 9 times to try and get all the ends, ifs, and buts.
That's my husband's job too. In my relationship, he does.
And
the
you
editing.
write?
Well, I do historical writing. I have one
Oh
book
yes,
about Lawrence.
I've got a couple of your books with the.
Only one book.
Only one. Yeah, I got it. It's
The,
the picture book with
yes, Lawrence and the Gilded Age.
I have that. Yeah, yeah.
And
I've been now
but I
collecting
have to do a
all
lot
those.
of writing in the kind of work I do.
Yeah.
And so, actually, it's coincidental that I got this material from the Essick family. The same.
Yes,
you lived
my
in the,
uncle.
You lived in the same house.
That's right. 32 Chelmsford
I have a
Street.
picture of the house.
Oh, God, that's gonna
a
be
very
fun.
good picture of the house
Oh, wow.
early on. It looks like it's taken in the 20s or so. You can't have it, but I
No,
can
no.
make you a copy of it.
Okay, that's wonderful. I'd appreciate
And,
that very
you know,
much.
this is my opportunity here to tell the public at large about the amount of historical material that the library does have, and the wonderful things that are out there waiting to come to us, and is an opportunity that I appreciate today. Now,
Well, you know, you said my uncle. You have to mention his name, Raymond Essick.
yes,
And he was like the unofficial mayor of Merrimack Valley. He worked at the post office all his life. He worked at the Lawrence Post Office, which is not there anymore, I noticed. That beautiful building is gone. And
it's
then
been
he
a
also...
long time since you've been here.
Yeah,
Dan.
yeah. I just rode by and saw McDonald's. I had a heart attack.
Yes.
So then he also worked at the Methuen Post Office. And I actually think, now I'll write a story about it in the end. We'll see if we get from any of his children. He didn't get married till he was 49 years old.
Oh, was it that old? Okay.
Yes,
Not
and then he
aware
had
of
3
that.
kids, twins and
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah.
But I think he was actually born in that house at 32 Chelmsford Street. And he was wanting to live his whole life out there, you know, through that house. And
Didn't
then finally,
quite make it though.
it burnt down.
Yeah.
They had a fire, and then he had
Well, I
to
don't think
sell.
the whole building's
No,
gone.
it's there now.
Yes, I drove by it.
And it looks pretty good,
Looks
you know.
good, yeah.
But for some reason, and I don't know why, maybe his wife or whatever, they thought of time for change. But I'm sure, and I heard rumors, people would email me or send me letters, and that after it burned down, he would walk down there every day and stand out in front of the building and look at it. You know. That was another
I mean,
story.
it's
Another
looking,
story.
In looking at the material from the family, and I've looked through the family photographs and looked at a little bit of the film under the microfilm reader and stuff. You know, a very typical, largely happy family.
Oh,
They
yeah.
seem to do very well with their lives. You know, and you look at the wartime photographs, this scrapbook he put together. I think he enjoyed the service tremendously. You know,
Yeah.
I think
Oh
it was
well,
a
he
real-
was one of those guys that was, you know, the treasurer of everything, and
Yeah.
he had a thing in his bedroom. I used to go up there when I used to shine his shoes. He shined his shoes like military fashion. In fact, he made me my first shoe shine kit, and I used to go to the bar rooms and shine shoes, you know, in Lawrence and stuff.
And
like
that's
that.
another story.
That's another story. Yeah, yeah. The bar rooms are the shoes.
One or the other. Yeah.
But my Uncle Ray, well, he was a wonderful man. And before he actually had his family, like I was like his adopted son there, because my father was overseas all the time in the Merchant Marines trying to make a living. So my Uncle Ray took me to the first baseball game, bought me my first bicycles, I got my first car. I mean, he did everything for me. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I was lucky enough that I was smart enough or whatever that before he died, I sent him a long letter to thank him for all the wonderful things he did for me as a child and so forth and such. And he has a wonderful memory, and he was a picture taker. I'm telling you.
Yes. Oh, yes. Trust me,
And
I know that.
And he gave me, and I'm having it turned into a CD. He gave me one of those, you know, where they used to do those moving pictures, you know, films. He used to have a camera, you know, back. Now they have the video cameras, but he had the old-fashioned
Yes.
thing, and he was always taking family pictures and taking them and then having
They're
them
right
developed.
down there.
Well, yeah, that's the box of pictures.
Those two boxes hold, I'd say, about 40 reels of
Oh,
8
reels.
millimeter tape.
That's it. Okay, he gave me one reel. He says this is about you and your
Wow.
family. So, and I just took it to a guy. He's going to put it into a CD, you know, on it, and so that we can see it in modern time, you know. But he was a great guy. He used to go to, like I'm saying, the guy when my father wasn't there, he'd go to the grammar school league basketball games when I played at Central Catholic, you know, and so forth. And my brother was, I don't know how old you are if you remember, if you were here, but my brother was a star.
I grew up in Oklahoma.
Oh, Oklahoma. Okay. Well, my brother's pretty well known because his basketball career. He went to Central Catholic and in grammar school. I mean, I think he won the first place trophies that St. Rita's ever had. And when I started there, like my brother's like the celebrity. You know, you go into school and they have the trophies from my brother lined up in the corridor. You know. And my brother, I think he played the varsity from freshman year on. He was like 6'3" in the 8th grade, you see. So and he was quite. Somebody was asking me. I think Christine saying, "I got to find out more information about Ernie Noble." And I said, "Well, go down to the Eagle Tribune because my mother used to have a scrap up because he was in there every week because they'd do the basketball games, you know, and they'd have pictures of number
Yeah.
27 jumping up there."
We
And
still have the microfilm. She
he's
goes up, yeah.
still got, yeah, he's quite well known. She went someplace and she said, everybody, they're not asking about me because nobody knows me. So they're all asking about, what about your brother Ernie? What's he doing and so forth. But unfortunately, Ernie's passed away. But he was an all-star.
Your book, Some with Charlie, has circulated quite a bit. In fact, the copies I think are all out right now, which
That's
means
great.
that someone's reading it.
That's good.
Hopefully, a little bit of our talk will maybe will correspond.
that's what we wanna do, get
We're
people
going to order
reading it.
another couple more of the of that particular book and the two books that we don't have already.
That's good. That's good.
I think it's probably time to go over and talk to what public has shown up for us today, and we'll take it from there.
All right. She is really a fine girl. She is. She really is. She's a great kid. And he just sat there staring at Charlie and not saying anything. After what seemed like forever, he patted Charlie on the back again, and as he got up from his stool, said, "Enjoy your breakfast." "I sure will," Charlie said with a big smile, putting down his knife and fork and sticking out his hand. The man shook Charlie's hand and nodded his head up and down. Then he went back behind the counter and into the kitchen. We finished our breakfast, but no Helen. She didn't come out of the kitchen. I don't know what I expected her to do. Charlie got another cup of coffee and just sat there staring at the wall. I don't know what I really expected Charlie to do either. He kind of felt like goodbye. Like he was trying to say goodbye, but he didn't know how to do it. Helen wasn't going to say anything, and Charlie had burned all the bridges and sunk all the boats. He rubbed his chin as he sat there. I thought that maybe he was going to get up and head back into the kitchen. But let's get out of here, he says. We went to the cashier by the front door, paid our check, and stepped out onto the sidewalk. We stood out there on the sidewalk, staring around at the old tenement houses for a moment or two. I wasn't moving if he wasn't moving. I really felt kind of cold to be just driving away. But Chucky headed for the car. We were both inside the car when Helen came running out the door. I nudged Charlie and he got out and went over to meet her. She just stood there with her head down and her arms at her sides. She was crying, of course. I rolled up the window. I didn't really want to hear any of this. She put both hands up and covered her face. He put his arms around her and pulled her to him. They just stood there, her face covered, buried into his chest, and his arms holding her tight. No words. Finally, he leaned his head back and pushed her head up by placing a finger under her chin. He gave her a little kiss. She looked up at him and then threw her arms around him, threw her arms around his neck and kissed him long and lovingly. When the kiss ended, she pulled away without a glance and ran back inside the diner. As we were about to pull off, I saw her standing by the cafe window. Her head was just visible above the row of checkered curtains. What a face on her. I couldn't let Charlie go without seeing this. I poked him and thumbed his view towards the window. He leaned towards me and peeked up through my window. Helen saw him and tried her best to smile. Chucky looked at her, then gave her the old Navy double thumbs up. She put both her thumbs up hesitantly over the curtain. Charlie straightened up behind the wheel, started the car, and as we pulled out, he leaned on the horn a few times and we were gone. Now I said, why I picked that out. I mean, I read it and I get a little teary-eyed in the book because I read all my books, get teary-eyed in any case. But that never happened. That never happened. That somehow comes out of my mind, you know, when you're sitting there writing, talking about you're interested in writing, you know. A lot of these things, like Jack, he said, always good. He said, I used to be writing all the time, and he'd come down the beach and he'd say, "Let me see what you're writing." And he'd look at it, he says, "You know, I can tell what you did all week when you're down here. First you went to the barroom down here, and then you went and got a loaf of bread. You know, you write about everything you do, you know." So when he got this book, he says to me, "I don't know what happened," he said, "but the only thing true in that book is that Charlie was with us at a cottage and he died." He says, "The rest of it," he says, "I don't know where you got that." And I said, "Well, Jack, I finally learned how to write fiction." You know? But that's the one of the fun parts of writing, when you write something that, at least to me, you know, can choke yourself up. And Christine got back in it. I hadn't read this for a few years, and she's got interest in this book. And I said, "Geez, I got to sit down and read that book again." So I sat down one afternoon. This is the kind of book you can read in one afternoon, you know, big print and thick pages. I did that on purpose too. And I sat there and read the whole thing, and after I'm done, bawling my eyes out after I, you know, and I'm the one who wrote it, you know. So I said, "Geez, this got to be a good book," you know.
I think what I gave that to about 10 different people from all over the Merrimack Valley, and the one thing that they all said was, "That could have been me," and it was male or female. Everybody
Has that experience.
over the age of 40, I would say, has rented a cottage, probably even
Oh,
younger
yeah.
than that, has done this, has had a sick friend, has done this, has had this experience, and it was kind of a universal Merrimack Valley.
Well, even when I wrote this, I had been away from Lawrence for like 30 years, and I locked myself in my room to start writing. And I wanted to bring back all the Lawrence memories, even the way we spoke, you know. So I kind of would write every page and read it out loud and try to read it with my Lawrence accent on there, you know, which I completely lost, you know. But so
You probably played 45s too.
played in 45s, yeah, played 45s, and
That was true.
oh yeah, I always played 45s, yeah. So it was fun. It was a fun book. I'm glad everybody's taking an interest in it. Hope they take interest in more of my books.
Could you read the part about how you formed the gang and how the cops would just move you guys from street corner to street corner? When you talk about it being a Catholic tenement city?
God, well now I have to
Was that
go
true?
find a section. I know that's right. That's right
I
at
don't
the
know, we
beginning.
have to ask him now.
Christine probably knows where it is.
Oh, do you know where it's at?
No, I don't, I'm sorry. It was in the beginning when you
Yeah,
talked
that's in the
about
first chapter, I know. But I did the first chapter's all I've got that deals with the why and all that. And first meeting Charlie, you remember that. And Charlie was home, and his parents didn't know what to do with him. His parents loved us. Quite an experience.
And they didn't know what you were really doing.
No, they didn't. They'd probably, if they were alive, they'd be reading this book, you know, to find out what really happened. But all they know was Charlie was happy. And Charlie would go home, I guess, and tell everybody. I know we'd go to the hospitals, like we were like celebrities, the nurses, and they'll say, you're Jack, and you're Dutch, and, you know, they knew who we were and so forth. Okay. So there's the why. You said somebody wanted to know who some of these people were, like Harry the Walker and stuff.
Oh,
like that.
yeah,
Harry the
yeah.
Walker. Well, they're all real, but I don't know. You know, I know the nicknames of it. Harry Walker, for me was what did I say? Ogovich. Stanley Ogovich. Remember? They used to walk. Walkovich. Okay, Stanley Walkovich. Yeah. And who told me Willie just told me today. He used to work with.
His name is Harry.
Harry, yeah, that's him. And then Superman, now that's a real guy too, and he was a bodybuilder, and Dutch used to be a bodybuilder, so he worked out with him. And that fellow, I mean, he was really ahead of his time in the bodybuilding. Look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, down the line and so forth and stuff. It was really, really good, but he was nuts. But the story I told about him,
Of course, we weren't.
how did I recognize him now? Well, in any case, I told that story in this book about his father. He was making a model of something, and then his father looked at the model, and after he had spent months making this little model, he smashed it on the floor and says, "It's flawed. You got to do this glue showing here or something." He smashed it. Well, interesting enough, I contacted some other of my friends. Leo Trotoshow was a friend of my brother's, and I worked with him at Brennan's. And there was a guy named Ray Bennett, and Ray Bennett was a friend of Superman. He knew his name, and they hung out as kids. And he said he was there at the house the day
Mm.
that father took that model and slammed it against the floor. And like I was saying, like that was the inspiration for him to make every muscle in his body perfect, you know, and so forth. But he was a good one.
It really made it sound like it was a hothouse of, you know, the common was a hothouse.
Well, I read a
of
review and
characters.
somebody said somebody had never been to Lawrence and so forth and such. And the guy wrote the review on one of those blogs and so forth. He says, "What an imagination this author has! He made up all these fantastic characters." And I'm saying, I didn't make anybody else.